my goal, like my favorite thing in the world, was taking all the kids who their lowest subject was math and making math their highest grade, showing them early, kind of giving them a lot of attempts, making sure my quizzes were really aligned to what the Deltamath was, to say, oh my, math is my top grade now.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Matthew Moore with Edit Your Best, and I am working with the Flip Learning Network, and we're talking specifically in preparation for FlipTech2020. And today we're talking with Zach Korzyk, who is the creator and president and founder and CEO and all those things of Deltamath, a great tool that if you don't know it yet, you're missing out. So welcome, Zach, for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Good to be here.
All right. And real quick, tell us what is Deltamath and where did it come from?
I created Deltamath a little over 10 years ago during my third year of teaching. It was essentially just a tool to let students practice randomized problems until they had mastered it, and then they had to keep trying until they were able to show a certain level of proficiency. But once they did, they would get 100%, so they wouldn't necessarily be. And they started doing a lot better on their quizzes, and then really it just came down to me learning how to program web servers and JavaScript, and I just kind of self-taught during that whole 10-year time, adding new content along the way, not just stuff I was teaching, but stuff in high school or lower grades, because I was teaching 11th grade. And now I've made it freely available to use. It's still free, but just this February, it was a little bit too much to handle doing teaching and this. And just like 3 weeks before the pandemic, I had planned on leaving anyway, but I left. I had 3 weeks of peace thinking, okay, now I have one job only. I'll be able to just add things at my own pace, and then boom, it kind of hit. And then I was so busy just because so many new users, they had all sorts of questions, and I didn't have any help with customer support, but I'm getting help, and I do have a paid product, Deltamath Plus, now that's going to help me pay that help and pay myself, and also pay people to develop additional content where I was lacking, such as middle school.
Well, and here's what I love about that quick synopsis. Clearly, it was something you built to meet a need you had and your students had. It certainly wasn't to make your job easier. I can't imagine how many hours you've put into this thing, and I don't think you want to count either how many hours you put into this. But the other thing to remember is that not everything is a big technology company. A lot of things are teachers doing well for kids, and those things just grow. And this thing has grown really naturally. I've been a Deltamath user and Patreon for, I don't know, a few years already. And even in that time that I've seen it, it's blossomed. It was a great tool to begin with, and it's blossomed even more now. But it is important to understand that people need to make a living on the backside of some of these things. But let's talk about the money. Let's just get it out of the way. How much is Deltamath Plus for an entire year?
So the price for a teacher for a year is $65.
Okay. Now, let me give you the flip side for the guy that pays that bill every year. Okay. That is not even close to enough. Okay. Because what Deltamath provides is infinite practice. It truly is. And I tell my kids it's infinite practice because your problems are generated by algorithm, aren't they?
Yeah, I create 100 just so they're a finite number of them, but it's essentially infinite, yeah, by algorithm.
And so then not only do they get the problem, they also get the solution. Whether they get it right or not, they get the solution. So you're not hiding and saying, nope, not yet, try again. Nope, not yet, try again. The student sees not just a solution, but the solution to the problem they were just given. And step by step by step by step, and I'll put a couple screenshots up as we go through this, but literally you're leading the student through with reasoning beside it, similar to kind of a proof format in most cases that I've seen. And then on top of that, that's all in the basics. Then you have examples that are available. And if I'm not mistaken, the examples are available in the basic free version of Deltamath as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I actually didn't take anything away from the free version when I went full time. I had just added a bunch of features, including just creating a video for each of the 1,400 different problem types available, which took a great deal of time. Like a 5-6 minute video, kind of explaining it conceptually a little bit, assuming they've seen it before, and then like kind of talking through it, a few examples, maybe an easy one and a hard one. Student could have support, and then just a bunch of extra features that I only had time to create when I was full time. So I feel like that was paying for my full-time job to create those features.
Well, and that's the thing. See, everything that I had described, that you get that right now. Just go on, use your email, sign up, start classes, give problems to kids, get analytics that just blow my mind. But then for the Plus version, you did add the videos. And let me give you, I haven't talked about this yet, but let me give you where I've used it just this summer. Since this whole thing happened, I've taught for 12, 14 years a developmental math class for the community college, that bridge between high school to college. And so you have some of the most struggling math learners that have been in the workforce, or they're coming out of high school, or they're older and they've been home and now they're coming back. They're not your traditional awesome math kids. But with this whole virus, it was crazy because now all of a sudden that whole math class had to go all online, all tomorrow. And so where do I go? Well, I go grab my Ed Puzzle and my video resources that I personally have put together as a Flip learner. But then I go grab my Deltamath. And in fact, Deltamath, between those two pieces, that's how the class runs. Is the Deltamath is the skills practice. It is the secondary instruction, because I am one of the Plus users. So not only can the students see me introduce a concept, maybe in the more basic way, see my examples, hear from their teacher, now they have a secondary source of help video, example, etc. Because let's be honest, as great a teacher as I may or may not be, I'm one guy, and not every person speaks to every student. And having that second voice is infinitely powerful. It really is. And I think it's a great thing. And I have some struggling learners that are doing a really great job because I'm giving them all the tools they need to be successful. And that, I think, is one of the important things about Deltamath. It's not going to teach math to kids. That's not its point, as far as I'm aware, correct?
It's meant to be a supplement used by a teacher. Yeah.
That's it. And so not only do you have the practice supplement, but you have the additional example supplement, you have the additional instruction supplement. Those are the things that, to me, really make this a full-blown process and a full-blown program. Now, let's talk a little bit about the different situation education we have now. You mentioned that you had stepped out of the classroom and then had kind of 3 weeks and the thing blew up. Give us kind of a estimate of how much bigger Deltamath got, how fast.
It was already kind of big. Sometimes what I look at is, like, on a typical school day, the number of problems that have been solved that day. And right before the pandemic, it was maxing out around 2 million problems a day. And then during, basically a month later, in April, I was up to like 3 million. So it was only 50% growth. But at that level, it was still substantial. And that 50% was all new teachers, and they all like needed help, and they all had questions. And so it was a lot of work.
Well, and that to me is actually amazing because, for example, you send those of us that are members or whatever they're called, you send us a number of problems. In my last calendar year in December, my students had done 46,000 problems. Just my kids in my class is like 46,000 problems. I got a bunch of kids doing that many problems? Yeah. And for me, the way Deltamath is set up is it is set up very much on a mastery basis. So I assign my kids 3 problems. All you have to do is get 3 correct for any given skill. I'm not assigning 30 problems, 25, because that is a frustration for the kid. It's a waste of time for a teacher, in my opinion. I want a kid to do 3 really good problems. That's what I want out of my kids. And so when we're talking 46,000 problems. That's to try to get, 3. And so you can see wrong, wrong, right, wrong, wrong, right, right, wrong. And the data analysis that you allow teachers to see really allows us to direct instruction. So when you're talking going from 2 million problems in a day to 3 million problems in a day, all of a sudden, it's literally 50% more all of a sudden. And you're right, it's so many more new people. What is the feedback that you're getting from some of the newer folks to Deltamath?
Well, I think they like it, but I think they need a helping hand. Like, it's ideal if one teacher in a school who uses it and is a little more savvy and has experience can kind of share that with the rest of the team. Like, because people are confused how it works. Like you said, they might have to get 3 right, but if they got one wrong, if you don't have a penalty, that means they just have to get 3 right ever. So they get wrong, right, wrong, right, wrong, wrong, right, and they have 100%, and the teachers are confused, like, how is that 100%? They only got 3 out of 7 right. So I think my scoring system, I think, is really like growth mindset, and it gives the kid 100 if they try, and they show that they eventually get there, but some teachers are confused about the scoring, so they have questions. So I guess that would be the number one question I had from new people.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things that to me is the best feature, one of those best features, because in math in particular, we've gotten such a bad rap of just assigning blanket sets of problems and not following up on our end to figure out, well, how are those students getting the problems? How are those students interacting with those problems? When are those students interacting with the problem? One of the things that I found is not only do you tell us how long a student took to do a problem, we can see when they did the problem. So if I see a kid's doing a bunch of stuff always in the middle of the night, well, maybe that's a discussion I have for maybe there's a better time, or maybe there's something in their life right now that means that's when they're doing their stuff all the time. And that now becomes an opening for teachers to interact with kids and meet some social emotional needs through a math program. That's kind of a strange way to think about it, but it does exist out there. And moving to that, as you mentioned, growth mindset, I'm not about numbers of problems. 46,000 happens to be a number. What I'm concerned about is how many did it take to get them right. In fact, I have a rule in my class: never get more than 3 wrong in a row. And because I tell them, I said, look, if I look at your numbers and I see more than 3 X's in a row and I haven't received an email from you, I'm going to be a little cranky with you. Because at 3 things wrong in a row, you and I need to talk. So it helps students develop those skills of, when do I ask for help? And, you mentioned growth mindset. You can set your grading a whole bunch of different ways. Like, how are a couple different ways you can set your grading in Deltamath?
Well, actually, what you just mentioned with Deltamath Plus, mainly there's options for the grading in Deltamath Plus. You can set a maximum number of problems that they can get. So you could say, hey, you have 10 problems. You need to get your 3 right within that 10. So you can sort of enforce that in the program, like what you're saying. And you can increase that, but maybe you can only increase it if they send you a note that explains, hey, this was my mistake here. This was my mistake here. I really blew it. No, give me 3 more shots or something. So that, because sometimes the students are just kind of like, they're not being mindful about their work. But the default is also that if they get it wrong first time, they just get a little message that says, hey, that's not right. Check your work now before I just show you the solution and you get a new problem. That forces them to actually look at their work, because they don't want to have to do a new problem from scratch. They want to find their mistake, which is a good experience. Yeah.
Well, and I think you're right there, because again, we're talking about a math program, but what you're talking about is actually behavior programming for some of those soft skills of, are you doing it being mindful to begin with? If you're not being mindful, I'm giving you an opportunity to develop that sense. If that's still not working, then I'm encouraging you or stopping you, preventing you from making a series of frustrating choices so that we can get you the help that you need. So training students, training learners to use wise behaviors while doing their practice. It's not just about solve for X. And that's another thing that I wanted to kind of touch base with you. When we're talking about Deltamath, it's not simply what's the answer. A lot of times you have a lot of drop-down menus where students have to choose why, because that's a big component of math that written homework doesn't accomplish, and that it's hard to do on an individual student-by-student basis. So explain kind of your thought process on some of your paragraph problems that have multiple drop downs.
Yeah, I call it a guided sentence. So I would like a student to be able to explain their answer, but every question on Deltamath has got to be self-graded. So I know I can't just grade their freehand paragraph, right? So I have drop-down boxes, and I guess I'm pretty sure that when they're selecting, like, the degree of the function is drop-down even, because the end behavior is drop-down. Like, I know that they're going to have to actually read that sentence in their mind as they're setting it out. So at least they're kind of like knowing, they're going to read that interpretation, and they have to say those interpretations correctly. So that's one way that I get them to kind of do, sentences. There's other things that are maybe more visual, where they have to drag things, and I would call those more interactive or guided. And those aren't the majority of the problems, but those are the ones that I kind of build in order to really develop the concepts. And they would always kind of give feedback if a student writes something wrong. They'll usually say, hey, are you sure about this? You want to fix that? So it's kind of like step by step. It doesn't let them continue until they get that part right.
Well, and that's the thing that I think people need to understand about Deltamath, is that it is put together from a teacher's perspective. It's not a matter of scoring a certain number of points. It's a matter of conveying concepts. So when you're talking about those guided practice problems, that student is using the math vocabulary in a way that reflects how that student will need to communicate that math concept correctly, either in the class they're currently in, or more importantly, because math is cumulative, as they move forward. And so when we use these phrases, when we use this language setup and get used to it, now we're speaking math, not just doing math. And that's a really important thing, especially in the K-12 situation. Now, you also mentioned that you were kind of grade 11. You were kind of upper grade focused. And I'll be honest with you, your calculus stuff shows it. It's great stuff. I used it in my calculus BC class. I used it in my calculus AB class. And I would even go back and I would use it in the pre-calculus class, but increase the number of attempts or decrease the number of mastery or increase the helps, because those students need to be able to see those things moving forward. This is where you're going, guys. This is where you're going. But you also have added, and specifically I noticed you've added a lot more here recently in the geometry and middle school area. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes. I mean, I have been adding geometry. Like, for example, in 2019, I did all proofs, but it took me 7 months to make it, because it was like, I wanted to make sure a student could do a proof any way that was logical, and it would kind of check their prior steps to make sure that the reason matched the prior things. And I individually programmed in 350 different proofs that I kind of edited and manually made so that they could get as many proofs as they want at a given level.
I need to pause you right there. Anybody that's ever done programming work just went, "Buh," because opening options in programming like that, and that's always been the challenge with proofs in math, is how many different options, how many different ways. And so that's huge. I hate to interrupt you, but that is worth noting. And having used it in class, it is very good. It is very good.
I would say, like, I couldn't just have it so there's like one drop down here. Like, other people do it to check off a box. I did it to make sure if you do, 5 level 1s until you can get that, like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be at your level, but you're going to learn it if you can get that done.
Yes.
And then if you can't get that done, you can watch the videos or you can get help from your teacher. So it's kind of just like, once you do it, it has to be the case that you understood it, at least in that moment. Now, as far as the middle school stuff, I have hired help now. I'm overseeing them, communicating with them a lot. but one person is programming the modules, and one person is like a coach in middle school and elementary, and they fully understand the Common Core curriculum. So, you know, they're developing it together. We're all kind of three of us interacting on Slack. And then I'm focusing on like adding the features of Deltamath Plus, which are still in the works. And I want to get that done before the school year, and I have to upgrade the server, honestly, to an insane one, because I think I was at the brink at the end of last year. So I knew that if I was going to focus on the Plus and the server and all the other business aspects, I wouldn't have time to add new content. So I do have people working on the middle school, because I knew that was lacking. But I think we have a good plan to get 6, 7, 8 going strong this year.
Well, and you know, the middle school stuff is great because, for example, I teach a class of struggling learners. Okay, it's for students who are not on grade level, and honestly, we're in about 5th grade, 6th grade math level. That's where we're working, and a lot of your pre-algebra stuff, even some of your algebra stuff, because we still need to get those students introduced to these concepts that are on grade level, in a way that maybe with more attempts or with limiting the choices, that they can still accomplish and be successful with that. Because 9 times out of 10, struggling math learners need some confidence. And being able to do until they get the yay is way better for them than here's 20 problems. And
right. What you just said, like, I can't agree with more. As a teacher, my goal, like my favorite thing in the world, was taking all the kids who their lowest subject was math and making math their highest grade, showing them early, kind of giving them a lot of attempts, making sure my quizzes were really aligned to what the Deltamath was, to say, oh my, math is my top grade now. I can't believe it. And then just that early, giving them like the tools to practice can really just take them through the year, and they keep that positive thing going.
But now, especially if you have middle school material, people shouldn't read that as, well, I have a 5th grade class. It doesn't apply to me. No. Please, folks, there's some stuff in here that 5th graders need to be at least exposed to. And with the supports that you have in the Deltamath Plus, they come with those supports built in, and that is huge. Another thing is, during this whole time, parents are now such a bigger part of the conversation and the teacher-student relationship. Because if we're not in class in person, now that parent is our surrogate. And the one question that I, as a parent, have always hated, and that I was like, I ask my kid, I say, how did your teacher want you to do this? Can you just tell me how they told you to do it? And the kid, of course, every single time, you know, nothing. Got blank stares and seeing the back of his skull through his eyeballs. But, you know, with this, the help's there. The steps are there. Because most folks are pretty smart folks. And you go, I don't remember that. Oh yeah, okay, I remember this thing now. Okay, let me watch the little video. Great, I'm learning math. It's wonderful. You know, they're not excited about it, but it's there for them. And that is huge. Now, you mentioned additional features. I don't know if I'm using Deltamath the way you intended, but I'm using Deltamath right now for my assessments in that online course. So I set up all of the skills in practice form, which is, hey, you just got to get 3, and you got multiple choices, and you got help video, and you got extra examples and all this. All that's your practice component. Now I have my instruction over here, and I do instruction with Edpuzzle and video, et cetera. But then it comes to assessment, and I simply put together where they have to get 1 of a skill. And I take away the videos, and I take away the examples, and I limit them to 2 attempts to get that, because I still can't break myself after all this time of training with Deltamath. I can't break myself of not giving the kid another chance to get it right. You know, and so that's how I'm running my assessments in Deltamath for this. And then if a kid is still really struggling, then we talk, I reset it, and I get to go do it again. You know, am I in the ballpark here for using Deltamath in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I always had it up until February, and I used it for 10 years just with those free features. But a lot of teachers did want to give a test, and I get that. So I did add the ability, like you said, to assign one problem and then let that be the only one that they will get. Now, you can assign it so your whole class gets a particular problem. If you like this one, you want them all to have this, or you can set it so everyone gets one problem, but they all be a different one. But if they get it wrong, then they can't just do more until they get it right. So if they're used to the getting 100, make sure you explain to them, this is different. It says down there, max problem 1 of 1. That's it. That's all you're going to get. This is an exam, and you may not be able to get a 100 if you get one wrong. Or you can give them 2 problems, and they say you have to get 1. So you can grade them then on their accuracy if you want to give sort of a summative thing, which is like after the practice and learning part.
Correct.
I also added the ability, which was highly requested. So I'm just taking all the requests and then doing what I hear the most. But they wanted to make a time limit, like you have 45 minutes. I guess the problem is maybe they were thinking, oh, if a kid has unlimited time, then they can just go online, use the phone, you call their friend. But what if their friend's taking it at the same time? They're not going to distract them. So the time limit was, after whatever you set it at, 45 minutes, whatever they do in that 45 minutes, they're not able to click again. Unlike regular Deltamath assignments, which after the due date, they can just keep going back to it. I figured if a kid wants to do more math, why take that away?
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah. Why would I stop a kid from doing math? But it is interesting how in different school situations or different college situations, the community norms determine what a teacher kind of has to do. But the way you've built Deltamath, it allows the flexibility to do it. Well, this is the way Zach did it, but this is the way I have to do it because it fits within the system that I live in, that pays my checks every 2 weeks, but at the same time, you can still keep creeping that standards in, that progress in, that really growth mindset. And that's the thing that I think you're right. Teachers really need to catch on with Deltamath is that growth mindset.
Right. And I, like you said before, it's really a teacher tool because the teacher has to make the assignments. And I know it's more work, but it's not at all meant to replace a teacher. You can't just say, oh, kids, sign on and do whatever it says, just take the practice tests, the diagnostic, and then just go through the pathways, talk to you in a few months. You can set them up a weekly assignment if you want, a week, or you could daily assignments depending on how you want to do it. But it's going to be like what you decide. This is what we're learning as a class. And I felt that most teachers still do that. We're all learning the same thing rather than, some of these things that say, oh, artificial intelligence is going to send every kid, there's 30 different topics going on. Possibly that works. I don't know. That's harder to make. And I'm sure that's really complicated and smart people thought about it. But teachers are probably not going to do that. And they want to we're learning quadratics for the next 3 weeks. And here you go, and here's your assignment, and this is the settings that I think works best for my students.
Well, and I think you're right. It is a tool, and a tool is only as good as you use the tool. And this tool, although you're adding things like a Swiss Army knife, it's still just meant for skill build, for practice, for growth. That's what it's built for. And these other pieces are things that it may do, but it's kind of like hitting the nail with the wrench sometimes. You need to choose the right tool for the job. But this tool is so useful in so many situations. Like I said, I work with for kids at a 5th grade level. I work with it up through the calculus level. And I've just not found much that's lacking in it. And the assessment component, that assessment bit, yeah, it's a little better because it's necessary to use that in some situations. But the core program just holds up so well. And I think that's why you still hear the same songs remade. I think that's why you see some of the same movies remade. It's not sometimes a lack of creativity, although sometimes but it's really a matter of the basic idea is so strong that it just keeps coming around. And I really appreciate that. So what's the next thing that you're going to add? Can you give us a sneak peek about something?
Well, there's the things that I sort of promised to make, so I have to make those. I do want to make the testing a little bit better in the sense that maybe right now, some teachers don't want it to show them the solution after they get it wrong on a test, especially if they assign the same problem to everybody, because then
Yeah.
if not, I'll take some time. So, and maybe they want to mix the questions around and it will create an automatic test correction assignment where they kind of get a custom assignment based on where they missed on their tests so that they can maybe raise their grade or whatever policy the teacher has on the test correction. The other thing I'm going to add is the ability to make assignments just for particular students or particular groups of students. Right now, you can get around it by kind of making a section and adding kids to those sections, but I just want to make that a lot more convenient. And then I also want to create, I kind of have already created an interface for teachers to create their own problems. And they're not, I hope you understand it's not going to be like mine where they're randomly generated, because then you're writing the code for it. You're just writing a problem, and I just envision kind of writing. I have a little thing where you can type math in a Desmos, or like it's called a math pillbox, like math. Yeah. You get, and then you can like add it into the sentence pretty conveniently. You can make like multiple choice or like sorting or fill in the blank, and then you would be able to write the answer and it would be automatically graded. Or adding like a little paragraph answer, which the teacher
would go grade.
The teacher could read it and give a grade, or maybe they just want to let it be graded on, if it was at least 100 characters, give them credit, like a reflection or something.
Yeah.
Just can add, maybe just make an assignment on Deltamath, have like videos and practice and reflection and a little bit of writing, or a problem that they found interesting that they wanted to program into that. So create your own problems. I'm also working on the ability to sort of print an assignment to complicated. It's in the works. I haven't promised that yet. I hope it's done in the fall, but probably not by August or September.
I vote for that one, and only because I have, when I'm addressing just a couple kids that have those access issues, that when I'm like, it's such a great tool, I'd still like to use part of the greatness for this kid over here. And so, no, again, though, the things that I hear you talking about are not gimmicks. They're not gadgets. They're not money makers, because you're not changing the price on the stuff. It's stuff to meet the needs of kids, and it's stuff to meet the needs of teachers. And I think as we kind of wrap this one up here, that's why I want to talk to you, because it's the passion that drove you to build it in the first place, the passion that drives you to improve it. It's the passion for kids that just comes right across. And that's the thing that I think more people need to see, especially in this time where we're all disconnected. And there's so many, there's an awesome tool here. Look at this app. And on Twitter, it's an app. And that's awesome. Those things are great. They're wonderful things. Well, sure, why not? But find a couple key pieces to the stool of your classroom, couple key supports that your kids can have that are really going to meet their needs in a number of ways from people that care to meet their needs. And I just want to express that to you, that we really appreciate it from this side of the screen, that's what you and your now team is all about, is meeting the needs of kids and teachers. And so we really appreciate that. Is there anything else that you would just love to share with either teachers who are trying to train for next year, or students who are going, I hate this guy. Where does this guy's new address? Is it in the background somewhere? Anything you want to share with either one of those groups?
Yeah, to the teachers, I would just say it is purely a tool that only cares about student learning and understanding. It's the only reason I ever make anything. I don't ever make anything to check off a box. And it really is super easy to use, but I think it just takes a little bit of time, to learn it, and you practice it a little bit. And I mean, as a teacher, I know I couldn't live without it. And anybody who gets to know it and learn it, they always prefer it to anything. So you just kind of reach out to somebody who has used it before, have them show you around. I think you will not be disappointed if you give it a try.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, Zach. And they can, of course, find the free, absolutely free version at deltamath.com. And then, of course, up there in the little corner is, would you like to plus it? And the answer, if at all you can afford it, folks, is yes. It is worth it, worth it, worth it. They don't keep hitting you up. It's just a yearly subscription, and you get everything that keeps getting thrown in. And so that's, as he mentioned, he didn't take stuff away. It's added on. And there's a community that is slowly building around this program. And if you do you're at Mr. Deltamath, correct?
Twitter. Yeah.
And on Twitter. And if you just hashtag Deltamath, people will answer you. And so reach out to that community. Don't feel disconnected, folks. Get connected and get connected with some great programs. Well, thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate you joining me.
All right. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.